Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our show spotlights people in our city who are involved in activities intended to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission and your host. The Annapolis Human Relations Commission is a city board that is involved in designing to promote activities in the city which are intended to eliminate discrimination and to enhance equal opportunity. My guests today are Brian Barrett and Mickey Handwerker of Dignity Players. Brian is the general manager and Mickey is the artistic director. Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We're delighted to be here.
Dignity Players is a theater group that has a very special mission and is operated out of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Annapolis. There are a number of theater groups in the Annapolis community. What is the niche that Dignity Players has?
The particular niche that Dignity Players occupies, and we recognize that fortunately we live in a city which is rich with theatre, a number of different groups. But the difference between Dignity Players, I think, and all the others is that we specifically focus on plays that have some message of social justice. We are a program of the Unitarian Universalist Church, and so our plays tend to reflect the mission and goals of that church, and one of which is recognizing the worth and dignity of all people. And so all our plays are focused upon all have some message of social justice in the play.
Specifically, our mission is to produce plays and musicals in a minimalist style, where the words of the play and the performances of the actors are highlighted in order to promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people, in line completely with one of the Unitarian Universalist 7 principles.
Mm-hmm. How long has Dignity Players been in existence? And tell our viewers a little bit about the very first 2 shows that you did.
We've been in existence this is our 5th season now. We'll be celebrating our 5th season at the end of 2009. The first play that we did was a play called The Exonerated by Jessica Blank and Eric Jensen. It was brought to me by Brian, in fact, who had seen it, I think, out in San Diego.
No, yes, actually, the origin of it was actually in New York that we went to it. Mickey had been talking he and I had been talking for some years before about shouldn't we start a theatre group within our church. And I might say us two, and also Sue Struve was the sort of third member who started Dignity Players. And my wife and I went to see The Exonerated in New York City, a play focused on those who have been exonerated from death row.
It really focuses on 6 individuals who'd been on death row from anywhere from 2 to 22 years, and they were in fact exonerated by a variety of evidence, be it DNA evidence, be it just other people confessing to the crimes and so forth. But they had been exonerated. Jessica Blank and Eric Jensen interviewed these 6 individuals and created this play, which we reproduced as a stage reading in our first season, about 5 years ago now. And we were thrilled, actually, to produce the play. It demonstrates very much. It's sort of an anti-death penalty play in many ways, in many instances. But the big thing that we were thrilled to do was that we were able to bring in a man by the name of Kirk Bloodsworth, who was the first man to have been exonerated from death row because of DNA evidence. And he was accused of a crime on the Eastern Shore of Maryland and had been on death row for approximately 8 to 10 years before he was exonerated. We were able to bring him in a panel discussion as part of our production of The Exonerated. It was an incredible experience. He was able to talk to us about what it's like for exonerated individuals, what they go through when they're actually released from prison. And interestingly enough, they're given $100 and told, go do your thing.
Yeah.
So fabulous production that we were able to put together.
But it was that was the thing that sort of spurred us into starting the Dignity of Players. We saw this play in New York and was absolutely bowled over by it, and came back and immediately said to Mickey, "This is the play that we want to use to start Dignity of Players, to get it off the ground," and a great success it was.
And then the second play we produced was the Laramie Project by Moises Kaufman and the Tectonic theater troupe that he created. And for those who don't know, the Laramie Project is about the beating and murder of Matthew Shepard, a gay college student in Laramie, Wyoming, that occurred approximately 5 years ago as well. Actually, it's been longer than that now. It's basically Moises Kaufman and his theater troupe went back to Laramie, Wyoming, and interviewed the town residents of Laramie, Wyoming, and what the effects of this murder had on the town itself. And just a fascinating piece. It had a cast of 12. It was very, very well received. Again, we did a panel discussion as part of the production with various ministers, church ministers, and individuals who had relations or a relationship in some way, shape, or form with gay rights and gay issues. And that really kicked us off. From that point forward, we've been moving forward at a pretty high clip.
I was going to ask a little bit about what you do with the proceeds from your play. I'm familiar you had very specific ways of directing the proceeds in your first two productions. I'm interested in letting you share that with our viewers, but also perhaps talking a little bit about what you do with the proceeds from your other productions as well, whether you follow that kind of format.
Sure. We've I might say proceeds are never as large as we would like them to be, but the church provides us with a budget to run the Dignity of Players on, but it is essentially self-financing in that we obviously sell our tickets, and the residue from ticket sales are deployed through the church to some or other, preferably related, but certainly some local charitable cause. When we, for example, from the exonerated, the residue that was left over there, we sent to a charity in Washington. Lost the name of the organization to come back to me in a minute, but an anti-death penalty organization in Washington, the Innocence Project, and so it always our proceeds will go to some or other related charity in the area here.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the other performances that you have done since Dignity Players has been in existence that you're especially proud of, or that you would really like to talk about, that you really thought were something special?
I think two really come to mind. One is a production that we've done twice now of the Vagina Monologues, directed by Eric Lund and performed by three fabulous women in the local community area. We did it, the first time we did it over at the community college in the Humanities Recital Hall, because the church space at that time was not available for us. And then we did it a second time last season when we did a season of plays for, by, and about women. And hugely well-received production. In fact, it only ran one weekend last summer, and in fact, it's the highest-grossing show that we've done, and it only ran one weekend. It's a charming piece about women's issues and women's rights, and just thrilled to have been able to do that. And the second production that I think I'd point out is a production of Dead Man Walking by Tim Robbins. The actor Tim Robbins wrote a version of Dead Man Walking, which was a movie with his wife Susan Sarandon, about Sister Mary Prejean and her crusade against the death penalty, for the most part, as a Catholic nun. We produced that in conjunction with the Anne Arundel Community College, and it was a partnership that we formed with the community college because Tim Robbins required that schools, colleges, or universities actually produce the play. That was the only way we could get the rights to it. So we partnered with the community college and produced the play over at the Humanities Recital Hall as well. Yet another, it's a wonderful piece, very, very moving, touching in every way, shape, and form, and really sort of just goes along the line with what we did with our first show, which was the Exonerated, sort of was a follow-up to our work on the death penalty.
I think I'd mention a couple of plays too, which particularly has struck me during these 5 years. One was a play called Gross Indecencies, The Three Trials of Oscar Wilde. We did this last year, and as the name obviously implies, it's a story about an account of the three trials which Oscar Wilde went through the end of the previous century, in the 1890s, in England, for essentially for gross indecency, for homosexual behavior. A wonderful play, and it happened. The character who playing Oscar Wilde was Jim Gallagher, a very well-known local actor it was extremely well received in the area. In fact, the criticism in the Baltimore Sun was we had most glowing reports on that particular play, and that was one of our great successes. Another play I'd just like to mention was a play called Death and the Maiden. 2 years ago, again, women's rights issue. It's the account of a young woman who was held hostage in Central America and underwent some brutality in a prison, and without telling the long story, but a very successful play focusing on women's rights issues in essentially an oppressed Central American.
We've been very fortunate, I have to say, to be able to get very good, strong local directors too. For example, Death and the Maiden was directed by Mary Wacko, who is Miss Senior Maryland 2 years ago. So.
Okay, we're going to take a break now, and when we return, I will be talking with Brian and Mickey about the productions that they are planning for the upcoming season. Today with Brian Barrett and Mickey Handwerker of Dignity Players, a theater group that focuses on human rights and human relations subjects and operates out of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Annapolis. Could you share with our viewers what your plans are for the 2009 season?
I would love to. I selected a theme this year, which we've done for the past 3 years, and will continue to do moving forward. And our theme this year is the military and ideological conflict and its effects on individuals and societies. And all 4 plays that we're producing this year have, in some way, shape, or form, relate to that theme. We'll open our season in just a few weeks, at the beginning of March, with a show called Back of the Throat, which is the tale of 2 government officials who interrogate, accuse, and torture an Arab American based on what some could construe as false evidence. It's really a play about the Patriot Act and the effect of the Patriot Act on individuals. And then we'll move on with a play called The Diary of Anne Frank, which is probably very well known. It's a new adaptation of that piece, which we'll be doing in May. And then we'll do a special production this summer of a show called A Bicycle Country about 3 Cubans who flee the Castro regime and try to make it to the United States on a raft over the Caribbean Sea. Beautifully lyrical piece. And we'll close our season in October with a piece called Blue Orange by Joe Penhall, which was a Pulitzer Prize-winning piece a couple years ago about the dying healthcare system in England and a battle between 2 psychiatrists over a black patient. And it brings up race and every number of things and how these individuals wish to treat this individual patient.
Could you tell our viewers now a little bit about the organization and management of Dignity Players, and how do you get individuals to direct your plays and to act in your plays?
Shall I talk a little bit of the management? The Dignity Players, as we mentioned, was started by Mickey and Sue Struve and myself, and we've sort of grown our organization from that. We have now, of course, entirely volunteer, perhaps 6 or 8 of us who are involved in various aspects of running each of the plays. It is a program of the church, of the Unitarian Universalist Church, so it comes under the sort of various cultural activities that the church sponsors and organizes.
I should just say that does not necessarily mean that you have to be a member of the church in order to see the productions, to be involved in the productions, or to perform or direct the productions. The way we initially started this was, since I was directing most of the shows, I ended up pulling local talent that I knew into the shows and cast them just by casting them, because I knew that they could do the roles. This was the first season that we've actually done open public auditions. We did that for all of the shows, and we'll do that moving forward for all the shows moving forward as well. In terms of directing, I know local directors. If local directors are interested, they need to contact me or go to our website, www.dignityplayers.org, to get information on how to contact us and what we're doing each given year. I'm open to suggestions for plays in the coming years, so directors who have a play that has a social message, all they need to do is contact us through the website, and we're happy to read them, consider them, and even consider them as a director for the upcoming season. I do look for plays that fit within the current theme that we're looking for, and I'm working on the theme for 2010 already now. And so we'll be moving forward in that regard. In terms of audience members, I would say the mass majority of our audience is not, in fact, church members. Yeah. Although we do publicize at the church, we are doing everything we can to publicize outside the church. We want to make sure that people see these shows. I mean, they're very, very powerful pieces of theater. And it's our way of really making a political statement in many ways. Not necessarily the church's way, but our necessarily. It's a demonstration of how art can really affect people and can inspire people to take social action. So we encourage people from all walks of life to attend our shows and participate in our productions.
I'd also add, actually, that in the management sort of team that runs it, although Mickey and I and Sue Struve are all church members, we have several who are not church members who are part of our management team, running publicity and various other things. So it's, as I say, although it's sponsored by the church, its scope is much wider than that.
It's very much a community theater that is very different than the other community theaters in the area. I mean, as Brian said very early on, our purpose is to do shows with a social message. And one of the reasons I wanted to be a part of it was because I really wanted to inspire people to stand up and start taking action. I didn't want people just to sit and come see a show and go, oh, that was wonderful, and go out and not do anything as a result of it. I really wanted people to come see a show that made them want to stand up and scream and shout and actually go and do something. And I can tell you, Back of the Throat, the first show of our season, is one of those shows that when it ends, you will literally feel like the need to stand up and scream. It is that powerful a piece of theater. And the other thing that really makes us different than other community theaters is everything is done in a minimalist style. We have very little on the stage. We don't use a lot of lighting. We don't use a lot of costumes. It's really about the words in the play, which is why we very carefully select our plays. And it's about the actor-director relationship and the way that actors and directors can work together to actually get that message out there in an artistic manner.
Mm-hmm. You talked about already thinking about your theme for the 2010 production. Mm-hmm. What are you leaning toward in terms of a general
That's
theme?
a very good question. I'm actually leaning toward a theme based on religion and the way religion is used or not used to benefit individuals and cultures within society. We hear a lot of talk about, our government has espoused that, the Muslim religion is theoretically, I guess an adversarial type religion, an antagonistic type religion, and I want to explore that option because I don't necessarily believe that's necessarily the case. I want to explore how governments use religion or, I guess, wrongly use religion to suit their means.
Could you share a little bit with our viewers about your respective backgrounds in the area of play production and acting? I know both of you have had I think, very good backgrounds in these areas, and I think the viewers would find that interesting.
I can give you mine in about 15 seconds, almost none. Actually, I've done quite a lot of acting latterly, done quite a lot of work at Colonial Players in Annapolis, but I'm a retired naval officer. I'm a businessman, and I spend more time doing music. Actually, I'm a musician more than I am but I've always been interested in the theatre and have been a great supporter of this program from the start. But
and I actually got an my undergraduate degree was in theatre from Skidmore College many years ago now, and I did attempt to make it in New York unsuccessfully and ended up becoming a teacher, got my master's in teaching, and now I actually have the best of both worlds because I get to do what my passion is, which really is theater. And I work professionally. I work for the Wilderness Society doing computer work for them, and I've directed at pretty much every local community theater in the area at some point in time since I've been back in the area. And so this is it's just a joy to me to be able to do the stuff that I'm so overly passionate about.
Looking ahead about 5 years down the road, where would you like to see Dignity Players? What's your vision of the future for your theater troupe?
Honestly, I'd like to see us possibly. I love a 4-show season, which is what we're doing now. I'd like to see us expand our 4-show season so that right now each of the shows runs 2 weekends. I'd like to see us expand that run to a 3 or 4 weekend run. I'd like to see us increase our production values a little bit, move a little bit. I want to stay with minimalist, but I'd like to see us improve our lighting conditions and our ability to do some more intimate type theater. The sanctuary at the church, it's a wonderful space and it's provided us wonderful opportunities, but it clearly is not the most intimate or personal of settings. It's a very large space. And I'd like to see us, work within that space to make some more intimate type environments. And lastly, I'd like to see us possibly develop into a company of sorts, where we have a group of actors, performers, who, not just me selecting the plays, but the company actually selects the plays and the themes, and then moves out into the community to cast those shows, find directors for those shows. And I guess I should say one other thing. I'd really love to bring in a more diverse community into our as our audience and as part of our performance troupes. We've been very fortunate to be able to get African American actors into our shows, but I'd really love to see a larger percentage of our audience be more of the Annapolis African American community, the DC African American community, and the other communities that exist here.
One thing I would mention is that the Unitarian Universalist Church is right at the early stage of planning a fairly major sort of building, capital building campaign and building extension, which will actually allow us to have somewhat better facilities than we've currently got, and so that would allow us to have a slightly better production facility there. For me, one of the major goals, I think, is to get the word out of what we're doing into the community, both locally here in Annapolis and in the local area. I look at the quality of the plays that we put on and the subject matters that we deal with, and I'd like to see us be able to be better at attracting larger audience and getting more people into the theatre. In that context, I would just like to mention how do you get hold of Dignity Players? How do you find out more about what we're doing? Well, the website, which Mickey mentioned a few minutes ago, is dignityplayers.org. You can also go to it via the church website, which is UUCA, that's Unitarian Universalist Church of Annapolis, UUCA-MD, Maryland, .org. That's the website of the church. And most importantly, telephone number of the church is 410-266-8044. And that gets you through to the church.
And our extension is 127.
Yeah, extension
So
127 is the Dignity of Players extension there. And that will have all information about upcoming productions, times of plays.
and if you leave a message on that extension, someone will get back to you within 24 hours.
Yes.
How has Dignity Players been accepted within the community of the theater crowd in the community? There's, as I mentioned earlier, there's lots of theater groups,
Yeah.
there's lots of performing arts individuals and organizations, and it's sort of a sorority slash fraternity. There's always certain amounts of creative interaction between each. How have you found yourselves fitting in with
I
some
think
of the
we've
others?
been very well accepted. I think it's important to note that we're not out here to compete against the other theater companies. We support, Colonial Players. We support all of the other theater companies that are out there, and we wish them all the best. Other theater companies do things because they need to do things a certain way, and that's the way they're built. And so we came about specifically because we wanted to do the type of shows that some of these other theater companies just don't do. Not because they can't do them, but because they choose to do other things for different reasons. So we're doing plays that other theater companies wouldn't even possibly dream of doing. And we're doing them in a very different style. And as a result, I think we're very accepted by other community theaters. We're not viewed as competition in any way, shape, or form. We get a lot of cooperation from the other community theaters in the area. Many of the actors and directors that you see on our stage and backstage are from other community theaters in the area. And we go over to see their shows. They come to see our shows. I think it's a really wonderful community, the community theater program, community in this area. So supportive of each other and just working to do the best work that we can all do.
And I would add, if you look at the reviews that Dignity of Players has had recently of some of its plays in Baltimore Sun and the Capitol, you'll see a huge level of support for it. And I find it now terribly gratifying when I go to a play and I read a bio of some of the best actors here in the city, and you'll see, they did this play with Colonial Players, or this play, and this play with Dignity Players. And I think we very much now hold our head up within the local theatre community with this special niche area that we fill.
Mm-hmm. We have been talking today with Brian Barrett and Mickey Handwerker of Dignity Players. And I'd like to thank you, Brian and Mickey, for joining us today. And thank you, viewers, for seeing our program today. And please join us again for another episode of Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, please jot down the information that's on your screen. You can contact us at 410-263-7998 or email us at hrcommission.gov. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, we have learned to fly the skies like birds, and we have swum the seas like fishes, but we have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters.